right. Ready to go down the rabbit hole with me today?
Always up for an adventure.
Yeah.
What are we diving into?
We're tackling Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, but not just any Alice. We've got our hands on an 1899 edition.
Wow. Now, that's a real find. Some stories really do stand the test of time.
That's what we're here to find out, right?
Yeah.
But before we even crack open this 1899 edition, I'm curious, what's your history with Alice?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for a lot of people, it's a childhood favorite,
Yeah.
But coming back to it as an adult, it's like...
I think you see it with completely new eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really fascinating to me, looking at this edition, particularly the preface and the dedication, you can tell Lewis Carroll really put thought into how he connected with his readers.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Right off the bat, in the preface, we realize this isn't just a quick hello to the reader. This is the preface to the 86,000 printing.
86,000, back in 1899. That's incredible.
Right. That's a lot of copies.
Mm-hmm.
But then it gets even more interesting when you consider what's actually in the preface itself. He uses it to directly address the Hatter's riddle.
Most authors would shy away from trying to explain their nonsense, wouldn't they?
You'd think so, but not Carroll. It's like he's inviting us into this playful world of word games, but he's also kind of hinting that maybe, just maybe, there's more to it all than meets the eye.
Exactly. And then we come to the dedication poem. Now, dedications weren't unusual in Victorian literature, but this one hits differently,
It's really quite heartbreaking when you think about it. All those images of golden afternoons and childhood dreams sort of fading away.
Absolutely. That bittersweet tone, I think, really sets the stage for so much of what we encounter in Alice. That yearning for lost innocence, anxieties about growing up, how time seems to slip away from us.
Timeless themes, really.
And they resonated so strongly with the Victorians, but honestly, I think they still resonate with all of us today, don't you?
Without a doubt. And you see that contrast so clearly with the very first line of the story. Alice was beginning to get very tired.
Bam. Right away, we're hit with this feeling of boredom.
A universal experience.
And boredom, as we quickly learn, is what really sets the stage for all of Alice's adventures. But notice how Carroll doesn't just tell us she's bored. He gives us this wonderful glimpse into Alice's mind. She's not just sitting there passively. She's questioning, what is the point of a book, she wonders, without pictures or conversations?
How meta is that? Even before falling down the rabbit hole, she's pondering storytelling itself.
Exactly. But Carroll, he doesn't let us stay stuck in our heads for too long. He brings us right into the scene with these vivid sensory details. The white rabbit with pink eyes, the feeling of the hot day, it all comes alive.
He was a master of creating those immersive worlds.
And that's part of his genius, isn't it? He seamlessly blends these childlike observations with surprisingly insightful commentary. Alice notices things, she questions things, she's not afraid to speak her mind, even when her ideas seem, well, a little out there.
She's definitely not your typical storybook child.
Not at all. And that becomes even more apparent in Chapter 2 with the Pool of Tears.
Mm-hmm.
1 minute, she's struggling to remember her multiplication table.
Relatable.
In the next, she's shrinking, she's growing, she's questioning her very identity. Who in the world am I?
That question right there, that's where I think we really start to see beyond the whimsy and into the heart of what makes Alice so enduring, right? That search for identity, the feeling of being lost, unsure. We've all been there.
Absolutely. And Carroll, he doesn't shy away from those deeper emotions, but he balances them with these brilliantly absurd moments.
Like a caucus race where everyone wins a prize.
Right. Pure chaotic fun.
Only Carroll could dream that up?
And then there's the mouse's long and sad tale, which of course sends Alice off on a tangent about literal tales. Carroll uses those moments of wordplay and nonsense to point out just how absurd language and social conventions can be.
It's like he's taking something that seems so ordinary, like a tea party, a game of croquet, even a history lesson, and he just twists it into something utterly absurd and yet unexpectedly thought-provoking.
He really does make you look at the world a little differently.
Yeah.
And that's where his true genius comes through, I think.
Yeah.
It's not just about the nonsense. It's about using it to critique the very fabric of Victorian society. The rules, the hierarchies, the anxieties.
He's holding up this funhouse mirror to the Victorian world and saying, look, isn't this all a bit much?
Exactly. And I think nowhere is that more evident than in one of the most famous chapters, The Mad Tea Party.
Which, let's be honest, isn't just about tea and riddles, is it?
Not even close.
Yeah?
Think about it for a second. The Mad Hatter, the March Hare, the Dormouse, they're trapped, in this endless loop of tea time. 6 o'clock forever.
Frozen in time.
Exactly. Time, or rather the feeling of being trapped by time. It's a central theme here.
Almost like a metaphor for that Victorian obsession with schedules and etiquette, always feeling pressure to do the right thing at the right time.
Precisely. And of course, then we have the Queen's croquet ground hedgehogs for balls, flamingos for mallets. Pure chaos.
You can't even imagine trying to play that game.
Right. But beneath the absurdity, Carroll is subtly critiquing those power dynamics of Victorian society.
Especially with the Queen of Hearts, right? I mean, that constant threat of off with their heads, a little bit terrifying even now.
Oh, absolutely. The Queen embodies a very specific Victorian anxiety, the fear of powerful women, loud, demanding, unpredictable, a complete disruption of order.
Such a stark contrast to poor Alice, just trying to make sense of it all.
And, through these encounters, Carroll challenges traditional notions of authority and control. He shows us how arbitrary and often absurd those in power can be.
But even amidst all the chaos, there are those moments of real poignancy. Like the Mock Turtle's story, remember him? Always mourning his lost youth and that absurd education.
The Mock Turtle? Oh, he's such a fascinating character. A symbol of lost innocence and the passage of time, for sure. But he's also how Carroll critiques the Victorian education system. Think about it. Those ridiculous lessons in reeling and writhing and uglification and derision.
Hilarious.
It's hilarious. But it makes you think about the rote learning and that strict discipline that was so common in education then.
It really does. And who could forget the lobster quadrille? Those dance instructions. Pure nonsense.
But there's a method to the madness, right?
Always.
Carroll is poking fun at those rigid and formal Victorian dances. It's like he's saying, lighten up a bit. Why so serious?
It's that blend of humor, social commentary, and just philosophical pondering, all wrapped up in this fantastical world that just stays with you. It really makes you think about seeing the world differently, doesn't it?
He really does. And he saves some of his most pointed satire, I think, for those final chapters, especially the trial scene.
Which is really saying something, considering how unusual everything else has been so far.
Right. I mean, this isn't just about some knave and some stolen tarts. This is Carroll taking on the whole Victorian legal system.
A system that, let's be honest, wasn't really known for its fairness.
Exactly. It was all about power and procedure and, actual justice. Well,
Wow.
It's often beside the point. And you see that play out in the trial. You've got witnesses like the Mad Hatter evidence appearing and disappearing,
And poor Alice stuck right in the middle of it all.
growing larger and more frustrated by the minute.
I can relate.
It's brilliant, though, don't you think? This satire on blind authority. And notice how even when Alice tries to appeal to logic, to reason, it gets her absolutely nowhere.
Because in Wonderland, the rules, they can change at any given moment, and those in power. They're not really interested in fairness or truth.
Which might be why it's almost a relief when we finally get to that ending.
Mm-hmm.
Alice wakes up, back on the riverbank, back in what we think of as the real world.
Safe and sound.
But there's that lingering question, isn't there? Was it all a dream?
It's the question that always lingers after Alice. What do you think? Was it all a dream, or is there something more to it? Carroll never really tells us, does he?
He doesn't. And that's what makes Alice's adventures in Wonderland so brilliant. It sticks with you. It sparks your imagination. It challenges you to look at things a little differently. It reminds us that even in a world that often feels nonsensical, there's always room for a little wonder.
A little wonder and maybe even a little rebellion against the things that try to box us in,
Absolutely. Never lose that sense of wonder.
So next time you're feeling a bit bored, a little restless, remember Alice and that rabbit hole. You never know what you might find down there.
That's the spirit.